Daniel Bailey says, I don't get how Woolen has tackling issues and people say he is no longer good. Sauce has tackling issues and a lack of takeaways, and yet he still is deemed the best corner in the NFL by most. Shaking my head. Not to mention what Sauce gets away with. Yeah, back spit all the way around on that one, Daniel. And that is where I say there's this, on a couple of these guys, there's a little bit of this narrative. Cross and Woolen especially, I've saw this from last year, of this being sort of looking at their past this last season and going, it was a bad year. And overall, I was like, no, it wasn't a bad year. It was a matter of there's holes in their game. There's significant holes, and they need to be addressed to get these players to the upside that they can reach. And if they don't address them, then it's going to limit them in that upside. But doesn't make them a bad player and doesn't mean them not still finding effectiveness on the field. And I think with Woolen, he probably had 3 interceptions as well on top, 3 or 4 that he had just dropped that were in his hands. He gets those picks and he gets those takeaways. People probably look at the bottom line of, he had another 5 or 6 interceptions. It was a good year. And they would totally then be overlooking those tackling issues you talk about, Daniel. So yeah, it wasn't a bad year. He's still got all of those coverage skills that we've seen. And in fact, let's also remember this with the stat that came out. I dropped a Trey Brown video yesterday, and on the Trey Brown video, I was showing you a little bit about the PFF. I know many of you are familiar with the PFF stat showing that Trey Brown was the best corner in press coverage last year. And in that video, I showed you that he only was allowed in press for about like 35, 36% of his coverage snaps, not the total snaps he played on the football field, but just those snaps that he was in coverage. Only 35% of those was he up in press. Expecting that to change. I expect that to be in a different state. To your point on this, Daniel, when you look at Tariq Woolen's season last year, and you look at the moments he was put into man coverage, much like with Trey Brown, Tariq Woolen was your highest graded corner in man coverage, not on the Seahawks, in the NFL. Tariq Woolen, best man cover corner in the NFL. But do you think, if I had you to lay a bet on black or red on this one, and I had to lay you a bet, and I told you, okay, well, Trey Brown, he only played in 36% of the snaps in press, and I was to tell you that Tariq Woolen was the best man coverage corner by PFF, do you think that he spent the majority of his reps in man? Or even close to 50-50 for that matter, versus zone? Another one where you're spending a small amount of that time actually in man. Same thing with Devin Witherspoon, by the way. Witherspoon and Woolen, I think 2 of your top 5 rated man cover corners in the NFL last year, both like that Trey Woolen stat with him in press, a small amount of the time actually in that role. This is a place that's going to be an easy adjustment and change for Mike Macdonald in this new defense. Because he at the forefront, as I said earlier, wants to put his players in the position to do what they do best. So does that mean that I'm going to have Woolen in zone a predominant amount of time? Or am I going to have him in man? And there will always be a pull within this scheme. This goes to the Trey Brown situation as well. There will always be a pull within this scheme. Macdonald has adjusted it where he's gone to some of the off coverage looks. He's built in more zone concepts to me than you got a little bit with Wink Martindale, where Martindale would lean so much heavily into the man base, which comes from the Buddy Ryan stuff, right? We're going to throw all of these guys at the line of scrimmage in these stacked boxes and blitzes, and then we're going to just ask our guys on the outside to hold up. And what we're going to tell our corners is like, okay, you are on an island. You are out there by yourself. We're not giving you a lot of safety help over the top, but you only got to cover for about 1.5 seconds. That's it. And so you do need the cover corners on the outside to get that done to run that scheme, but there will always be a draw from Macdonald, even though he's gone to the zone concepts. And he did that really by necessity because those were the corners that he had. He made that adjustment versus Wink. Wink would say, oh, my starters are out. I got to go to my backups. We're running man. Cover 0. And Macdonald goes, well, I can't. If I got my backups, I can't go cover 0. I got to protect those backup cornerbacks for who they are and what their talent is. Why did the Seahawks double down on cornerbacks in this last draft when they were already sitting on a bevy of so many? Because I think this is a place that Macdonald has learned from Wink Martindale. I don't want to get myself stuck back in a place where I don't have enough corners, quality corners to put out there on the field to be able to run my scheme in every way that I want to run it against any given opponent. Specifically, to be able to go to man coverage concepts on the outside to neutralize an opponent that might struggle with man coverage concepts, like we've seen within our own division with the San Francisco 49ers, who it's being brought up more and more about some of these receivers having problems on that team at times in generating the separation in their routes against man coverage. That it's the team that does a lot of its damage against zone, and that's where they're really at their best. So Woolen's got that in his game. He's got that upside still remaining there in his game. He did not have a bad year last year, and the flashes of all-pro coverage ability that he showed in his first season are still readily apparent, are still right there. This was not a flash in the pan rookie season for him. this is a guy who can still bring a lot to the table. Does have to clean up the tackling, and it's a couple of different things with the tackling. It's not just bringing the guy to the ground. It's also the willingness and want to get off of blocks, the willingness to throw his body around in there to make those tackles, to not be sometimes looking like you're protecting yourself or making business decisions. So it's a bit of both of those things with him. But the coverage skills, the ball skills, knowing that if he's playing a full season for us again this year, I'm expecting whether he takes a big step or not in the tackling numbers, he'll get you 5-6 interceptions with the way that he plays the position and with the way that they're going to lean into the man coverage concepts. The tackling just becomes the key.